Alright, this is Manos of Evanic Animation Studios, and today I'm going to show you how to make a human hand in 3ds Max. I'm using 3ds Max 2015, and you can get your copy at autodesk.com. Alright, so let's get started with going to our Create panel here. I'm going to drag out a box into this top viewport, and then I'm going to grab our Select and Move tool, which is W on the keyboard. And then I'm going to go here to our XYZ coordinates. I'm going to select this one here, click 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, click enter. We're going to hit our select and move tool, our select object tool again. I'm going to go over to our material editor here. We can get there by hitting M on the keyboard. I'm going to grab that first material and drag it over to our box. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and edit our material so we can use it. I'm going to name it hand. And then I'm going to our standard button here, and we're going to go for the multi-sub object. We're going to keep the old material as a sub material, and then we're going to set our number to 1, click OK, and then reset it to 3, then click OK again. We're going to name that one nails, which is number 2, and then go back up, look, make sure everything's good. We're going to change the color down to a dark gray for the nails, and we're going to name number 1 hand. Hit tab 3 times, name number 2 nails, and then we're going to close that out. We're done with our materials editor, and I went ahead and made sure that this box is still selected. I'm going to right click and hide unselected to hide the floor. I'm going to rename the box here, H-A-N-D, hand, and then we go into the modify panel. Here in the parameters, I'm going to type in 6 centimeters long, a width of 9 centimeters, and a height of 3 centimeters. We're going to go for a length segment of 7 length segments, width segments of 3, then click tab again to seal the deal. And we're going to right click that box and transform it to an editable poly. Let's go ahead and zoom in on our perspective viewport by hitting the Z key. You can also zoom by scroll wheel on the mouse. And it looks like we have our box selected. Everything's good. I'm going to go ahead and select element. And actually, I'm not going to do that yet. We're going to do that in a moment. Right now, I'm going into the front part of the viewport here, and you can see with our view cube that we're in the front. I'm going to select that first center polygon, and then I'm going to hit the control key and select these polygons here on the right hand side. Okay. Once we have them all selected, I'm going to go to the extrude. We're going to select 3 centimeters. Then I'm going to click the plus button and make sure that we have 3 sections for each one of these, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to grab the element key, which is number 5 on the keyboard. I'm going to right click in an empty area of this rollout here, and I'm going to polygon material IDs, and right here I'm going to do the set ID to 1, and then I'm going to click the clear all button to clear all the smoothing groups. I'm going to set that to 3. Alright. Now what we're going to do now is deselect our edit mode on our polygon here, and we're going to scroll down. You can also hit T, but we're going to scroll down and put an instance of turbosmooth on here and make sure smoothing groups is selected. I do that by default. We're not going to have any different smoothing groups on this iteration of the model, but I like doing that anyway, just so that you're in a good habit of doing it. We're going to go back down into, actually we'll scroll around and show you that this is starting to look like a hand. Now this is going to be a human hand, but today I'm not going to use a hand model or a reference model of any kind. We're not going to use any photos or pre-existing models to go by on this. I'm just going to show you the basics of how to make the hand itself. Now the end result's going to be fairly realistic, but you can just keep dialing it in. You can use your reference model to get a very realistic dimension if you wish, or you can make it cartoonish, however you want to do it, whatever your animation needs are going to be. but today we're just going to go ahead and show you the way to do this. And let's go ahead and get back down into our polygon model here. And I'm going to grab the polygon key, which is number 4 on our keyboard. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these back polygons because we don't need them. Those are going to be the wrist. This right here is going to be the wrist, and it's going to connect to the arm. And so what we're going to do is just hit the delete key, get rid of those, and let's do a little bit of work on this thumb. Go ahead and go start with a thumb. Let's zoom in and select these vertices here in our top viewport. And then I'm going to click the select and uniform scale tool. I'm going to activate my angle and percent snap toggles, these two buttons right here. And then I'm going into this viewport here, zoom in, and I'm going to bring that down to about 60. And then I'm going to grab these fingers and I'm going to bring those down to about 60 as well, give or take. And then I'm going to hit the letter W on our keyboard and go ahead and move those up with our move tool. And then we're going to go into the top viewport again. I'm going to select a uniform scale again, which is R on the keyboard. We're going to scale those down to about 30. And you can see the percentage right here on whatever handle you're grabbing. If it's all of them, you can grab the center and it'll show all 3 of them. But if you just grab this one, it'll show whichever one's active. Like the x-axis right here is active right there, but the other ones will be unaffected. So let's Control-Z to get out of that. And let's go ahead and select these vertices here. What I'm doing is selecting right in between these fingers here, and we're bringing them together. And I'm going to do down to 30. I'm going to grab these, go down to 30, and then I'm going to grab these upper and lower, raise these 10% so that we have fairly even fairly even fingers. They're kind of squared. And that should do that for the moment. I'm going to round this thumb tip off, and the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to pull this up towards the fingernail. The fingernail will be on this back side right here. We would see it be right here. And I'm going to repeat that process on the fingertips by going into our front viewport and just dragging up a little bit. And as you can see, our fingertips are nice and rounded now. And of course this doesn't look like a hand yet, or not like a good one anyway, but it will. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to get a little bit of a kind of contour here, like almost like slope here, because your fingers start out skinny and get a little bit thicker as they go towards the palm, and then the palm kind of does the same thing. Actually, I'm not going to move that one because I need that there for the wrist. It's been a long time since I've done a hand model. I recommend when you do like a model, whenever you do this model, whenever you get something you like, if it looks good and you've got everything dialed in, actually make a copy of this model and then just use this copy for every human hand you need, and then you can just adjust it, make it look more feminine or more masculine, however you need it, and do all of the things you need to do to make it look more or less realistic that you would need for whatever applications you're using, and then just run with it. And I'm back in the top viewport. We're selecting all of these back vertices where the wrist is, as you can see here, and we're just going to scale those down, make sure our percent toggle is still selected, and I'm going to go grab this center triangle here so I'm just doing a uniform scale all the way around. I'm going to scale that down to about 70. What you're looking for here, and of course it changes from hand to hand. Again, we're not doing this exactly to like human specs. I'm not dialing in an absolutely accurate hand. I'm just showing you the process of making one today. And but what you want to do is you want this area here to be just about the size of these vertices here. So as you see here, it looks fairly, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it looks fairly good for now. So we're going to go ahead and roll with that. Okay, now we're going to do some work on this top part of the hand. We're going to connect these vertex sets here. I'm going to click Q on the keyboard so that we just select without moving or changing the scale or rotation of anything. And I'm going to go to my weld settings tab here. I'm going to go ahead and click that. I'm going to set that to 2 centimeters so that just in case I've got something selected on the bottom, it won't weld it to the top, but otherwise it'll weld anything that I click together here. And now that I've got that dialed in at 2, I can just click the weld key, and then it'll weld everything I click from here on out. And I believe this is set broad enough, even though this complete thing here is further than 2 centimeters. The longest distance between the two should be less, and it'll go right on ahead and make that into a single vertex. And as you see here, we got some triangles in this model. You want to do, for animation, for games, you can do games with triangles, because when you model something for a game, it usually doesn't have subdivisions, so you want to go ahead and go to the simplest form you can, which is a triangle. But for animation, you want to do as much as you can in quads. You want to have as few as few triangles as possible, because you're going to use turbosmooth or mesh smooth. And what that's going to do is when you have quads in your model, it makes the math a little easier for turbosmooth or whatever to turbosmooth makes these into quads no matter what. But like if you use mesh smooth, it will do funny stuff with triangles. So just depending on which one you want to use. But of course, I'm using turbosmooth. We did an experiment for about a year with mesh smooth, and I didn't like it, so I went back to turbosmooth. But what we're going to do is we're going to let turbosmooth handle these triangles in a little while, because we're going to break this model down into a subdivision in a few minutes, and it's going to quadrify these. As you can see here, it makes these into quads. So all the triangles will be rectified into quads. And let's see. Now what we're going to do is just kind of repeat this process on the bottom, but you see where we just did it down here? We're going to go and put all of these together. These go together, and if you want, as you see, we're going to do those as well. You can select all of these and hit weld, and it'll just weld them sideways because they're farther than the 2 centimeters right here. So it'll save you a little bit of time. Just grab them all at once, hit weld once, and then just like so. We don't need as many polygons on the bottom here for the palm, so that's why we're doing this. And then I'm going to select these 3 here, and we're going to make these into one just like the other one up on top. So we need these here for the meat of the palm, and we're going to rectify these later. And then we need this extra articulation here, or this extra spot here. This is going to make for a little spacer between the fingers to give a little bit of depth in the actual back part of the hand, so that if you want, you can do tendons, or you can define the knuckles, or both. Define the space in between the hand, in between each finger on the palm part here, or the back of the hand part, and so on. So I'm going to look at this model one last time. I'm going to click the element mode again, just verify that we've got the right settings set up. Everything's on 3, and then I'm going to deselect those, deselect the editable poly, and I'm going to go into turbosmooth here, and we're going to go ahead and bake this model. So the way we do that is just right click and collapse to, or collapse all, it doesn't matter, and then just make sure this is an editable poly. When you use turbosmooth, it turns it into an editable mesh, So we have to right click again and make it an editable poly. Alright, so we baked an instance of turbosmooth into this model. So now what we have is a fairly low poly model of a kind of unformed human hand here. So what we're going to do is add another instance of turbosmooth so that we can see what the end result's going to look like. So we're going to go over here to our modifier list, hit T on our keyboard and grab the turbosmooth. Make sure smoothing groups are activated, and going to go ahead and give a quick render of this here, kind of have a look-see at what we have so far. And as you can see, it's a fairly good looking, fairly smooth model. Again, there's not a whole lot of polygons in the scene here. It's got an instance of turbosmooth on a somewhat low resolution hand, high enough resolution that you can articulate it, and low enough resolution so it's still a little bit or easy on the CPU and the GPU. So that's looking okay so far. Let's go ahead and deselect our show end result toggle, and we're going to go ahead and put some knuckles in here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab the edge tool, go into my top viewport first, and this is our first knuckle, this is our second knuckle, and this right here, this mess, is our third knuckle. So I'm going to just select these, and that'll select all 4 fingers. I'm going to hit connect, then I'm going to hit W on our keyboard and move this towards the center just a little bit, and like so. Doesn't have to be perfect yet. Like I said, we're not going to actually use a model for this. This is going to be just kind of eyeballing it and just getting a basic idea. And as you see here, I've went on both sides of this knuckle thing here so that we have some vertices between this, so that you can make, joint morse and whatnot more defined on this knuckle area here. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is just repeat that process for this one and this one. Okay, and what we're doing is moving them close. They don't have to be perfect, because every finger and every hand's a little bit different. So you just want to kind of eyeball this so that it kind of matches where you think it would be. And then we're going to grab these. And for these here, you can grab the vertices if you want of this area here, and then rescale them down so that they're all even, or not. It really depends on what you want to do there. I usually leave them alone, and I just grab the W key and push them back a little bit, verify that they're in the right place, and it looks pretty decent, and I'll probably never really mess with those again, not these particular ones. Now that we have that set up, we have a few issues here since we moved these closer that we can fix really quickly by just grabbing the vertices themselves and then just kind of moving them back where you think they should be. And again, none of this has to be perfect. We're not using a hand model right now or anything. But this will give you the tools when you finish this, or actually at this stage here almost, you'll be able to dial in exact human hands dimensions. So if you have a physical human hand model that you can use, or photos, now would be a good time to start bringing the photos in and matching everything up, or at least getting it ready to. We got a few more things to add before we can really start, adding curvature to the fingers and everything. But it's a good thing. It's a good time to get ready for that anyway in your mind. So the fingers are done, and I raised up these knuckle joints, or the center of these knuckle bands here, so that when we add our turbosmooth, we have a little bit of a knuckle like bump here, and at the same time we have a little bit of a crease here. Now granted, I'm exaggerating this a little bit so you can see it, but when you render this, it actually doesn't look that bad. And we're talking about a very low polygon model, And we look underneath, and it looks like we got a little bit of ridges under there, some creases, and it's starting to look more and more like a hand. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to our thumb here, and let's kind of get an eyeball of where our knuckle joints are, and that would be the two knuckle joints. And for this particular area here, you don't need anything here. You can add it if you wanted to, but this is kind of like a webbed, kind of meaty area of the thumb. So you really don't have to do anything there, but these are our two knuckle bands. So let's go to edge, let's deselect those, go to edge, and we're just going to go ahead and rope those, connect, move them a little closer, and just basically repeat what we did with the finger. Connect, slide them in a little bit, and then we're going to connect, slide them over a little, connect, slide them over a little bit, and the thumb typically looks a little better than the fingers do, and I usually don't even mess with this. You'll see that sometimes you have to pull this down 10% or so to kind of get it back where it was. Sometimes 10% is a little bit too much, so just kind of dial it in however you feel is necessary, and then put the snap toggle back on. Go to our vertex mode, and I'm just going to grab both of these at the same time for this now that you know what we're doing. Click W on our keyboard and just slide those knuckles out a little bit. And again, this can all be fine-tuned as you're going through the model and you're making changes and tweaks, but for now it just sets like a basic parameter for everything. Let's select Q on our keyboard and go into polygon mode. And let's grab these polygons on top of the fingers here, spin around and get these on the thumb. And we're going to inset as a group, so the stock settings are fine, but 1 centimeter is insane. So what we're going to do is do 0.05, and then click the checkbox, make sure that's good, and that actually is pretty good, and then we're going to click OK. Going to go into our element mode here, select that again, and then for the last time. And by the way, it's good to just kind of do this over and over more than just wait till the very end, because sometimes you're going to have models that need different smoothing groups, so it's always kind of good to do this every 20 or so steps or whatever. Just kind of keep an eye on what you're doing. That way it never really becomes a problem. And we're going to go ahead and go back to vertex mode. We're going to zoom into this area here, and again we're getting all of our fingers at once. Click W, and we're going to drag these where they're pretty much in line with this part of the finger here. Okay, Control Z to get back out of that, and then I'm going to make these where these lines here are almost pretty much straight. You can do this to varying degrees, whatever your hand needs you have. It doesn't have to be as deep as that, and it doesn't have to be as shallow as that. You can do however you need to suit your particular modeling needs on this. And then we're going to kind of repeat the process here. We're just going to drag it in and down a little bit. And again, this is more eyeball than anything else. You don't have to drag it forward. You can just drag it straight down if you want. You can do it like this. Like I said, it really just depends on what kind of needs you have as an animator and what your hand needs to look like. So what I'm going to do is I just decided to kind of mate this to those lines there, and then we're just going to call that good. And let's go ahead and look at that, and now we have some underneath the fingernail definition. Zoom in a little bit on that and go ahead and render. And as you can see now, even though this isn't a lot of iterations on turbosmooth, we still have a pretty good defined fingernail area. And now these aren't the fingernails, but we're going to make those in just a minute. So what we're going to do is toggle our show end result back off, and we're going to repeat this process on the thumb. We're going to grab these two vertices here, and by the way, just so you can see what you're doing, you know, it's always good to kind of get the viewport centered up that you need. I'm just gonna Control Z. We're gonna kind of repeat that process again. It doesn't have to be the same. And by the way, the thumb is usually a little bit different than the fingers anyway in every respect. So to model it a little bit independently is fine. Like if this needs to be deeper or whatever, so I'm going to make it a little deeper. And I'm going to hit Q on my keyboard. And what I actually made a mistake there. What I need to do on that is deselect these and just grab these two here and these two here, which will actually get all of these vertices here, and then we move them. Sorry about that, guys. I almost didn't catch that. And looks like we're looking good on that. Click Q on our keyboard. Show end result. And again, looks like we got a little bit of definition there already. Let's deselect that. Go up to turbosmooth. Let's hit our render iterations and set those to 3. So you'll have a good idea of what this would look like in an animated scene. Go back down, show end result. And look at that, look how smooth that looks and how clean and defined it is. If this ridge is not defined enough for you, you can define it more by just changing these vertices here. You can move them back in, you can move them down. It really doesn't matter, just as long as the end result is what you want. And if you want to check and see what your changes will be real time, you can load this up like this and then just go back into your viewport and make changes however you want. And as you see here, you're seeing kind of like what the end result will be. This is a little bit extreme, but you know, some things are going to call for this. Like if you're doing like a bear claw or like a tiger's paw or something, this may be something you want to do, because then you could slide the fingernail right in there, you know, because you want to keep these models, you know, especially in hand areas, you want to keep it as low as you can. But let's go ahead and deselect the vertices. Deselect that. Let's get out of our modify mode and deselect this hand for a few minutes. We're going to go up to our top viewport, center the hand, go back to box mode, and I'm going to draw a box here where the fingernails are going to be. Just one. And we're going to modify the height to 0.5. That'll make a really thin fingernail. You can do it as thick or as thin as you like or need for your model, but for the purposes of this tutorial, this will be absolutely perfect. It's also going to be very low polygon, and you'll be able to get a pretty good amount of detail out of this as well. So what I'm showing you is detail and you know, low polygon count at the same time. So, oh, and another thing, when you articulate this in a scene, like say you're doing a animation scene and you have this hand in the scene and you don't have turbosmooth activated, you see here it doesn't change the actual dimensions of the hand that much. So you can actuate and articulate this hand, and it can wrap around and grab objects and whatnot, and still be fairly close to the end result model, so that you're not going to have a whole lot of errors when you're doing your animation. You won't have to go back, like if you render a scene and the thumb, you know, crashes into like a cup and it's coming into the inside and it's animating, it's crazy and horrible. You really won't have a whole lot of that with this. Because like I said, when you deselect that, it's still very similar to its original dimensions, and basically the lines you see here would be close enough so that when you did your final result, the end result animation would need very few tweaks. But back to the fingernail, let's go back in here and let's name this nail, even though it's not going to stay this way because it's going to eventually come into the hand here. But for now, we're going to call it nail. And let's go ahead and add some length and width squares here. I just need one length and one width. I don't need any height. You can add a height here, and this would keep the nail from rounding over quite as much when you put turbosmooth on it, but it really doesn't matter. It is so small and so thin that it actually seems to look a little bit more realistic if it just rounds into itself naturally. But again, that's your call. So I use one, but you're welcome to use two if you want. So now that we have a little bit of a crosshair kind of thing going here, I'm going to grab this top viewport and I'm going to move this in so that it is kind of, you see where our fingernail indentation here is, where the cuticle and everything is going to be. So just go ahead and slide into here, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and kind of move these to where they need to be. And I've zoomed in as much as I can zoom in, and I've got the actual lines lined up in the two models. And so I've got my fingernail selected still, and then we're going to just pull it up to where it's basically in the area where the fingernail is going to be. Okay, and let's just zoom out a little bit, and these dimensions are fine. I'm gonna shorten this just a little bit so that it'll be a little bit easier to pull it out and work on. And then we're gonna go ahead and right click and convert to editable poly, and we're gonna put a temporary turbo smooth modifier on here. Gonna go ahead and do our smoothing groups, and then we're gonna go to element, hit Q on our keyboard, and smoothing groups, we're going to go ahead and set our ID to 2, clear all, smoothing groups to 3, and then go back into our editable poly here, and that looks a whole lot better. Okay, let's grab our vertices, and what I'm doing here is I'm going to select our show end result and kind of zoom in so that I can see what we're doing here. What I'm trying to do is land this right there where the fingernail will meet that line there on the hand, and I want to push that, the back area here that's curving, I want to push that back into the hand a little bit. For myself it works good, but if you want to have this, it's actually a lot of fingernails have that, where like right at the cuticle the fingernail kind of ridges down, so you can do that as well. I tend to go a little straighter on these, and again it's all personal preference at this point. So we have these 3 vertices back here selected. I'm going to deselect the center vertex here and then go back into here, kind of butterfly that out a little bit, and you're going to have to tweak this quite a bit. It only takes a few minutes, but you're going to have to tweak it a little bit to get it to fit the way you want it to fit. And let's go ahead and go back to our move tool, and we're just going to kind of rescale and move as needed until we get the curvature we want. And go ahead and grab that, slide it back up. It's not looking too terrible. Hit the Alt key to deselect those center ones. Looks like I'm going to have to pull these out a little bit. A little bit more on the rescale. And then we're going to grab these front ones, pull them down a little bit, and again, you know, this is kind of, everything you do is going to affect everything else. So at this stage of the game, we're just kind of dialing it in. It's not going to be perfect yet. And then we're going to grab these center ones again. We're going to scale all of these out. And then I'm going to deselect the center ones, and we're going to push those down. Okay, and as you see here, with very few tweaks here, we've got everything inside the line we want. Doesn't have to line up exactly as long as it's inside that line. And let's go ahead and rescale these 2. You can do this in the center viewport if you want, or the front viewport. Let's deselect our percent snap toggle for now. We won't need it. Kind of ease these in and grab these, pull these in just a little bit, W key. And as you see, as we make tweaks, everything kind of works on everything else. And we're getting closer and closer to the end result we want. That doesn't look bad. Let's grab these again, pull these in a little bit. Actually, I'm not going to pull them down, I'm going to rescale them in just a touch. Okay. Then for the final part here, we're going to pull these over. Fingernails tend to overlap on the outside here. So what I'm going to do is close this in just a touch. This is probably the hardest part. And again, this early, we're not looking for perfection. We're just trying to dial in the basic fingernail shape. And there we go. Getting fairly good. I'm going to scale these in. Somewhere around there. And then grab the W key again. And what I want to do on this is I want this lip for the fingernail to just barely kind of go into this area here so that the fingernail looks like it's coming out, but you don't have to add anything to the finger itself to get that realism you're looking for. These have got to come in, so I'm going to rescale these a little bit, raise them up a little bit, something like that. Looks pretty good. And once you get that dialed in pretty close, it can kind of crash a little bit on this. It doesn't really matter, because when everything is said and done, when you render it, it actually just kind of blends, and that's actually what you're looking for. Let's go to turbosmooth, give us a little bit more iterations on this render so you can see what the end result's going to look like. Go ahead and hit that again, and this is crashing, but it's crashing on a lower polygon resolution. But even though it's not going to show, we're going to pull that up anyway just to be safe. And then I'm going to grab these center ones and we're going to pull them up and center them just a little bit. That should give us our final fingernail shape. I've got a couple more little things, and you can tweak this as long as you want to tweak this for your model. I'm going to have to move on here in a moment. So what I'm going to do is copy these and then just kind of copy and paste. Once I got this dialed in, I can repeat the process by just copying this nail and just hovering it over the other nail areas and then kind of centering them up like we did the first one. And so we're going to take turbosmooth off. Actually, first I'm going to do one final render. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. This crashing here looks kind of bad on the side, even though it's not really showing up that much. I'm going to fix it anyway. We're going to fix that by grabbing these and just sliding them in just a hair to get them inside of that line a little bit. And that's pretty much it. When I come back, I'm going to have all of these lined up. I'm just going to copy them. Let's kill turbosmooth. I'm just going to make a few instances of them and line them up. Okay, so I have my fingernails copied and put in all the right places here. And as you can see, each finger so far is still the same. So once you get it lined up here and where it's sitting in proper, it'll sit properly on all of these fingers. So what we're going to do now is make sure we have %snaps reselected, and I'm going to go over here to the select and move tool. We're going to grab this last nail that we had that we lined up, and I'm going to shift and move it one copy, And then we're going to get out of this viewport here. I'm going to get out of this and do this here. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees this way, and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees this way. So now I'm going to zoom in, and as you see here, we're going to do the same process for the thumb. We're going to have to tweak this a little bit more because the thumb's different. And right now, all we're doing right now is just centering it up like we did the other ones. So we just repeat the process. Now what we're going to do, get into our modify panel. Put turbosmooth back on this one. Grab that handle and slide it up where it's close. It doesn't have to be perfect yet. Again, like you saw before, you're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking to make this right. But this is going to go a lot faster because most of the tweaking's already been done. Deselect our % snap toggle. Can I get that one in there? So far, so good. It's going to be alright. I'm going to grab these two. Drag those out a little bit. And then grab these two, which is actually both sides, so it's 4. And drag those out a little bit as well. Okay, so that's looking pretty good actually, first shot. It's not exactly how I want it. Just a little bit there. Grab these back ones. I'm going to slide these in a little bit as well on this thumbnail. Alright, let's go ahead and look at what that's going to look like. Let's go ahead and do 3 on that too. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and run with this. It's like I said, we're not doing 110,000% as far as realism here. I just want to give you the basics of how to get this done. Okay, we're going to hit Q on our keyboard. We're going to delete this instance of turbosmooth. I'm going to make sure that there's no turbosmooth selected anywhere else on the fingernails. They're not. So what I want to do now is grab the hand, editable poly. You don't have to go into the stack. And then just grab the attach, and one by one, as you see, we've already got our material IDs and our smoothing groups set up. So all you have to do is attach it and then deselect attach, hit Q again because it switches it from select mode to select and move. And now when we zoom in on our fingernails here, they're going to look somewhat decent. See if I can get a angle here that's going to show a little bit more of the actual detail there. Yeah, so that's not so bad. And again, this is a material that doesn't really show a lot of detail in itself, but you can see here we got a little bit of a cuticle ridge here, and we got the fingernail overlapping, and then we got the fingernail going into the finger on the sides here. And again, you can get into your hand model here, go to your vertex mode, and these individual vertices here around the around the fingernail, you can tweak until, you know, as much as you need to tweak to make this more or less how you want it. And even to the point, you know, again, you know, you want to keep it as low polygon as you want, as you can, but you can even grab these and loop them, ring them, my bad, and then connect them to get that extra geometry there if you need it. But you know, usually you don't need it. Usually this is plenty for a fingernail and finger combination. And again, you know, these overlap already, so if it's long fingernails, you just make these where they extend out, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step here. Okay, so let's kind of back out a little bit here, and now we have this all one big giant model here. Let's start making this look a little bit more realistic. Let's go into our vertex mode, and we're gonna have to do some very precise selections here. And I'm going to go ahead and select the entire pinky, and I'm going to uniform scale the pinky. So let's go ahead and get our percent toggle back on. And I'm going to go into the center triangle here to do it uniform or universal. Going to go down to 70, and I'm going to click the W key, and I'm going to drag it straight back. We're going to move it in closer later. We're not going to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and do that right there. And if you want, you can grab, matter of fact, I am going to do that now. Before I do anything else, I need to show you this here. Let's select all of these here. These are what are going to be like the actual top knuckle part of the hand. Let's grab these and let's get a little bit of definition there. And a lot of people want to put that right there, but in actuality it looks a little bit better if you pull it back a little bit, just a little bit, and then pull it up. Doesn't have to be up very much. Q again, and I'm going to grab these two behind it, as you see here. Just grabbing them, and this is going to give us the hint of a tendon in this area. We're going to pull this up to where it's kind of a little over there, because what we're doing is we're going to line this front one. We're going to line this front one with this back one back here. Okay, get it where it's close. It doesn't have to be perfect, and then just select these two, which is actually 4, and slide that in a little bit. And then when you show end result, we zoom in here. See how much more definition that has, and took almost nothing to do. So you have almost unlimited possibilities on defining this hand. You can make it look old, you can make it look bony, fat, anything you want to do, and you don't have a whole lot of polygons here, so it's not going to be a whole lot of an issue. So we're going to go ahead and dial in our actual dimensions of the fingers, then we're going to roll the fingers and roll the thumb, kind of position everything a little bit, and we will actually be done. And to do that, it's not very difficult. It's a little tedious, but it's not very difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these here, and I'm going to rescale to 70%, and then I'm going to drag it straight back, and you don't even have to move it back yet if you don't really want to. And then I'm going to repeat that process. Let me do that again. Make sure you have all the vertices selected. And then we're going to do this one at 80 or 90. Doesn't really matter. Let's do 80. So I want to shrink that middle finger a little bit as well. Slide this straight back. Kind of pull him up a little bit. And then here, same thing. Go to 90 or so. I mean, it depends on what hand, is it masculine, feminine, old, young, depends on these dimensions more than anything else. Plus, how real does it need to be? How exact are your, and then I'm going to do that one to 80. I'm going to slide this one down because these two usually match in girth and whatnot, so kind of push that in for now. And then now what we're going to do, but you take these and you're basically just dialing it in a little bit here. If you had a reference model, now would be the time to get these exact. But we're not using a reference model, we're just kind of eyeballing this right now to give you the idea of how to do this without getting too crazy with it. So here I selected all these back ones here. I left all these centers alone for now. We're going to have to do those individually. Grabbed all of these. I'm going to go into this left viewport, and I'm going to shrink these down. You can shrink them down uniform like that, but it usually causes more problems than it's worth, and I just go ahead and shrink them down to 70 or 60. Really doesn't matter which one. It's just you're kind of eyeballing it, and then you just kind of line it back up so that pretty much to where it would have, and you want to look in this viewport here. because you want to keep these lines here pretty much straight. Get back over here. And so you basically do something like that. Or like this, let's see, go ahead and kind of line these up. Yeah, that's not too bad because the knuckle line looks good still. Okay, and then we're going to select this one because we did not grab that one a few minutes ago. Select all these centers here, and it might take a time or two to get all of them lassoed in. Again, we're not selecting that middle piece. We're going to get him in a minute. And we go to our rescale tool here. We're going to go to just 90 on this one. You can do 80 if you want, but 90 is usually fine. And then look at that in this viewport. Kind of line the knuckles back up. And again, we're just basically, and as I said, we're going to do these centers in a minute. We're not going to grab those yet. They're a different animal. Then grab this center and this center. Have to forgive me, it's been a while. And get all of these like we did before. Again, be careful not to select that middle. If you miss one or two vertices at this point, it'll stand out like a sore thumb when you're done. It'll just stick right out, so you don't have to worry about it. You can just find it, rein it back in later. What we're doing now is just basically just trying to dial this in to get a little bit of a contour of the hand and a little bit of the dimensions of the hand, kind of work those out. We don't need to do that one. And grab that. We're going to do that thumb meat over there, which is probably going to cause us some problems later, but that's okay for now. Do 90 or 80 on this left viewport. And again, that's looking pretty decent, but let's just verify. Yeah, that's looking all right. And now, so we grab these centers. We're going to go grab all the way from the outside here. The outside, just the center ones. All the way over. I don't think we got those, so that's all right. We'll go ahead and grab them anyway. And then we're just going to kind of eyeball that. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna move these a lot. Like I said, depending on how realistic the hand is, depends on how much you got to move these. And again, like I said, if you grab something by mistake, it's okay at this point. You're not going to do a lot of damage. It's going to stick out anyway, like when you're doing your, final checks. And that's that one there. And you see here, I'm rescaling these in this viewport. The reason why is because it's a little easier to see. I'm going to hit Q on our keyboard, and before I go any further, I'm going to round out this pinky from behind the knuckle, not the knuckle itself, but from behind the knuckle. I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to pull them out just a little bit. Notice I didn't go all the way down yet. Just a little bit. And I'm going to even that up. I'm going to kind of eyeball this one and this one. I'm not going to touch the wrist because the wrist will be welded into something anyway, and you're going to have to tweak one to get it to the other, so on and so forth. I'm going to repeat that process on the inside here. Oops. This is going to have to move forward anyway, kind of like that. You'll see later when we tweak the thumb a little bit more. This we can leave alone, but I'm going to go ahead and pull this out to there. Pull this out to there, give it a little bit more round. We'll deal with the rest of the rounding in a little bit here. Now that we have this done, I'm going to go into this left viewport again. I'm just going to round this hand off. I can do 2 or I can do all 4. I mean, I can do 1 finger or I can do both fingers right now. And what I want to do is just go ahead and grab both of those. I kind of use this center point and this kind of ridge here as my guide. The hand kind of rolls in on itself just a little bit. So then grab that all the way up to that middle piece and just slide him down just a little bit. If it doesn't look like it's enough, oops, doesn't look like it's enough, just grab again and repeat the process again. A little bit more, little bit more. And then we do the same thing again for the entire thumb. And the first finger here, we grab all that. Make sure we have it all. And it looks pretty close. And we're just going to grab and slide that down just a little bit. Again, if we miss anything, you'll see it later, because we're going to go over this entire topology in a little while and kind of tweak the palm and the the tendons again. And like I said, I mean, it depends on, I'm not doing your hand model. I don't know what you need. So that's going to do that for now. Now we're going to round these. Alright, now to round these fingers, we're going to go ahead and actually let me go ahead and pull this out a little bit as well. I'll pull this web of this thumb out a little bit. And let's go ahead and before we round these, I need to pull these fingers in a little bit. Grab that. And what I'm trying to do is match these inner ones. You may have to pull this in a little bit, you may not. But that looks like the only one that really needed to be moved, because it's the one that we shrank the most. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that in just a hair. Just like so. And just like, oops. Just like so again. And to rotate these, let's make sure we got our snaps on. I'm just going to grab the pinky first. I'm going to rotate from the back to the front. Doesn't matter how you do it, just this is how I do it. We selected this very end piece here. I'm going to grab our rotate. I'm going to grow these vertices all the way back to right there, right in front of that joint. And then I'm going to move this 10 degrees. So it goes 5-degree increments, which is good. I'm going to go ahead and move it 10 degrees. Click W on my keyboard. And you see here, what I'm doing here is there's a line right here between these two vertices. I am matching that line so that it's straight with the line behind it. And you can check it just by wiggling a little bit. When it wiggles out where it looks right, go ahead and shrink that, and then shrink that. And these you can basically do the same way. We're going to do 5-degree increments from here on out. You can also do 10 if you want. It really depends on the finger, or like I said, what your modeling needs are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide that in a little bit. Then shrink it 5 degrees. Slide this one in, and remember, you want that knuckle to still be there. So that ridge has got to be there, and right now is a good time to squeeze them together more if you want, or if you need to make any other tweaks. Like if you want to scale the fingers a little bit sideways, or you know, however, so they got a little bit more of a tapered look. You know, you can do that now if you want. And then we just repeat this process. And again, like I said, we're preserving this knuckle situation here. And what's going on this side, I want to kind of match it on this side, at least for now. Then shrink it 5 degrees, and then match it. And again, if you have a hand model in play, be it a model you got from like Poser, or if it's an actual photograph, then you know, now will be a time that you want to match that, you know, the angle, the contour, and whatnot to the actual model that you're using. 5 degrees, slide it in, and as you see, this is kind of just shrinking a little bit as we go, because the finger does shrink as you go. And then there, and like so. Like so. Like so. So on and so forth until you get to where you're happy with that. And now, when we put on turbosmooth and render, and so then we repeat this process, and I'm going to go ahead and do all of those the same way I just did that one, and then I'll come back. Alrighty, so I got all the fingers rounded off, and what I'm going to do now is we're going to add a little bit of spread on them, so that when you put bones in this hand, the bones aren't going to interfere with the other fingers as much. Makes it a little bit easier on your animators. I'm going to do this one 10 degrees, and then slide him back about where he was. This one I'm doing 5 degrees. Slide him over here. He doesn't have to be perfect, but as you see here, I am pretty much using these lines here as guides. They don't have to be absolute, but if you can get it sort of close so that it looks square, then that's all you're going for. This one here, the center finger or the middle finger, we're not going to touch. And this one here, you can do either 5 or 10, doesn't matter, as long as it's got a little bit of spread on it. And right there should be fine. So now, although these aren't, you know, absolutely scaled and absolutely perfect, when we render this, we have a pretty close rendition here. And again, like I said, you know, you put some skin on here with the knuckles and dial in these dimensions where they're, you know, correct, and these you know, the contours and whatnot, and then make any changes you need in the topology. Throw some wrinkles and whatnot on here, and some creases in the material, skin, cuticles here and whatnot, fingerprints on the bottom. You are going to have a very convincing 3D hand. And let's see here, yeah, like right here, if we render this here, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but you see here, we're starting to see there's you know, some hills and valleys here. And then now the last thing to round off is the thumb, and the thumb's basically the same idea as the fingers, but it is a little bit different. For now, what I'm going to do is make sure that this one here, these vertices here, kind of match with this. And your thumb a lot of time is thinner right here than it is anywhere else. And by thinner, it's not thin this way so much, but it is thin this way. Now that's not everybody, but if you pull it in 10%, that's going to give it a lot more realistic situation there. And so now we're going to grab the whole thumb, We're going to do 5 degrees this way. Again, you can do however you want to get, you know, whatever effect you need. Pull this in somewhere around there, and the thumb is going to need to be rescaled a little bit more. So let's pull it down. Something like that. And again, I don't have a model in front of me. I mean, I'm kind of looking at my own fingers, but it's not, you know, it's not exact by any stretch. And this line right here, we can use that kind of as a reference. Slide that here, and then we're going to shrink it. Do another 5%. Slide this one in like so. 5%. Pull that in like so. Shrink it, and you've already done this, so but you see here we're doing this on the top viewport now because it's the thumb, it's a different angle. And we're going to kind of match these, and what you're doing is you're just basically matching the knuckle up on each side. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, especially when you don't have a model. Here you go, there. Let me actually grow that again. Let's move this in quite a bit. Then shrink it. Round it off a little bit more. Pull that in, kind of match each side. What you're doing is just getting a little bit of symmetry on each side. Shrink. As you build a lot of these things, it starts to get pretty tedious. And again, you know, like I said, there's going to be a point, hopefully, where you have these enough of this stuff saved of your work, so you don't have to do this over and over. That was 10. So let's just do 5 on that. And again, you can do more if you want. If you want more bend, more curvature, it is your model. You do whatever you need to do to make this model work. And so that looks pretty good. Now we're going to grab all of this again. And I'm just going to grab this viewport here. Do 25 degrees, it doesn't matter how many degrees it is really. And what you're doing is you want to kind of line these top ones up with these, not this part here, but the rest of the hand kind of. So you kind of draw an imaginary line so that the actual bones of this thumb, center line here, kind of working in to where they would be on the hand. And again, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect right now. It's in a little bit, but we're going to leave that alone for now. Grab this, slide it in. That's okay there. Make sure we got the right vertices. And then just pull that out. And there's a couple more things we have to do to the bottom. As again, like I said before, if you want to do some more tweaks here to the top part of the hand, tweaks here to make this more fluid, you're certainly able to get in here and do whatever you need to do. If you want to pull these in, pull them down, you know, pull them, you know, over, whatever, doesn't matter. You know, like I said, it just depends on how realistic you want it and what your animation needs are for this model. So let's go ahead and pull this down. Let's pull this one down. The meat on the bottom of the thumb usually kind of works with this meat on the palm. And then for the palm itself, we're going to select our show end result. We're going to do a couple more welds here. We're going to do some really quick kind of crash course in topology here. I think topology is the right word. Grab these center ones here. I'm going to pull them in. Again, we're just making basic palm movements here. Slide this up a little bit. And then, oops, keep that one selected. Pull him down just a little. Oops, should have selected the other one. Pull that one down just a little bit. Just a little. grab these, but don't grab that one. Pull them out just a bit. You can tweak these as needed, and then we just kind of match that. Not quite, but just kind of match it. This is fairly decent. And yeah, that's going to do for the purposes of this tutorial as far as the topology goes. Now that we have that basically dialed in, what I'm going to do is grab these vertices here. Let's reset, make sure these are set at 2 centimeters for the weld settings, and then just click the OK button. Then select these, weld, select these, weld, go into your edge selection, get in between these fingers, and get rid of those edges there. So we get rid of them by hitting Control, Backspace, and we're done with those. Now, one of the areas of the hand that a lot of people, when they're modeling, this kind of webs. So you want to take these here, like in this area here. You want to take these, see where these are. They're kind of somewhere around in there. Grab these, and then just on these 2 axes here, which is this little outside band, just drag them together, and then that way it'll kind of web where the finger is, and then repeat that process on these other inside pieces. And then once you get them where they're lined up, you can tweak them as needed. And let's see what the end result's going to be. Not too bad. We're going to do some more work like that here. Let's hit Q on our keyboard, and I need to select these here. So all of these here should be up in this front viewport right here. Again, like I said, it has been a long time since I've had to do a hand model specifically. But we're going to grab these, and we're going to rescale them not on both axes. We're just going to do the one, because I want that kind of ripply look for now, because we can use that. But I want to scale them and then move them up here. And again, you can use other parts of the geometry to kind of line it up, and you see I'm just kind of making that line. And then I'm going to drag these down a little bit. And each hand is different, so this is going to be like on this one here, there may be a little bit of a dent, and this one here may come out a little bit. But again, like I said, when you have your hand model in the scene, you'll be able to make those tweaks as you need. And then let's see what we have here. Let's render that. Looks okay. That center piece isn't exactly right, but like I said, you put a let's grab him as a matter of fact and pull him a little bit further down, and let's go ahead and do a final render here, and let's see what that looks like. Alright, my name is Manos of Evanic Animation Studios, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Check us out. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, tell your friends about us. But go ahead and try this tutorial out, and if you like it, go ahead and tell us how it did for you in the comment section.